So today I'm going to be taking a look at a very interesting product. This is the BLUN Wireless Pro RGB controller, or as it says on the box right here, the Double Shock 4. Yeah. Basically what this is a PS5 DualSense clone that is compatible with the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation 4, as well as PC and Android devices. Now, the DualSense controller has set the bar incredibly high for what a controller can accomplish. But how well does its clone counterpart perform? Let's find out. Inside the box, you have the controller itself, a USB Type-C cable for charging and connectivity, as well as a USB Type-C OTG adapter, which is necessary for connecting to the Nintendo Switch, at least initially, but I'll get into that a little bit more later on. The controller does a really good job of recreating the DualSense controller's aesthetic. The button layout and even the textures on the gamepad all feel extremely similar to the PlayStation 5's DualSense. It has 4 face buttons, 2 analog sticks, and a directional pad. You have your options and share button. In the center, you have a fully functioning touchpad, and over towards the bottom, you have a working speaker, a home button. Now, what these 3 buttons do is the 3D button allows you to adjust the sensitivity of the analog sticks on the fly. So whether you want a more tight control scheme, or you're one of those high sensitivity analog stick users, you can accomplish this simply by pressing this button. The MOT button allows you to adjust the power of the vibration on the controller, and the T button allows you to activate the controller's turbo feature on the fly. Over on the top, you have your 4 shoulder buttons as well as the USB Type-C port for charging and connectivity. And over on the controller's backside, you have 2 back paddles, the switch that allows you to go from PlayStation to Android to Nintendo Switch, as well as a reset button on the bottom. The controller has a 2000 mAh battery and has a headphone jack over on the bottom. Comparing it to the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller, you can see that they are extremely similar. The placement of the directional pad doesn't quite match up, and the touchpad is slightly more concave than the DualSense controller. But for the most part, the placement of the analog sticks and face buttons is virtually identical. It even has that slightly drooping circle button that the DualSense controller has. It's got some solid weight to it, and texture-wise feels almost exactly like the PlayStation 5 DualSense. DualSense features that are missing from this controller is it does not have a built-in microphone, and it most definitely does not have the adaptive triggers that the DualSense has. They actually came up with a pretty hilarious alternative to adaptive triggers. When you press the trigger on this controller, it has like a secondary vibration motor that just vibrates the trigger. Including this was totally unnecessary, but it wouldn't be a clone controller if it didn't try, so they get an A for effort. Powering on the controller, you're treated to this awesome light display. It has a button on the back that allows you to cycle through a bunch of different lighting effects. A very nice touch, I will add. Now, what had me most interested in this controller is its compatibility with the Nintendo Switch. Connecting it to the Nintendo Switch is actually pretty simple. First, you have to make sure that your console has wired Pro Controller communication turned on. And then you take the USB Type-C OTG dongle and plug it into the bottom of your Switch. Plug in the controller using the USB cable provided, and your Nintendo Switch should recognize it almost instantly. After it pairs up for the first time, you can go ahead and disconnect all of the cables, and it will communicate with your Nintendo Switch wirelessly. The first thing I noticed while using this controller was I was not a fan of the D-pad. It sinks in way too deep when you press it, and I was getting a ton of dropped inputs while playing Street Fighter. Fortunately, the analog stick was the complete opposite and was extremely responsive. The gyro controls worked beautifully as well. When I'm using gyros, I like mine to be a little bit more on the tight side, and this controller was exactly what I was looking for. The gyro controls on third-party controllers always seem to be hit or miss. This one was definitely a hit. With the exception of the D-pad, no matter what I threw at it, it handled it very well, and made for a really solid experience on the Nintendo Switch. For as good as it performed on the Nintendo Switch, it actually performed that much better on the PlayStation 4. You can really tell that this is the console this controller was made for. Being able to adjust that analog sensitivity at the push of a button was really helpful while playing first-person shooters, and made for ultra-precise steering while playing racing games. The touchpad on it worked every bit as good as the touchpad on the DualShock 4, and the thing is just overall solid. One thing I will point out is I noticed a slight humming coming from the built-in speaker on the controller. It wasn't loud enough to be annoying, but still definitely noticeable. I was able to fix this by lowering the volume of the controller speaker. So the DualShock 4 wireless controller. Guys, I can honestly say I was pleasantly surprised at this controller. I was not expecting much, and it far exceeded my expectation. I would rank it as a mid-tier third-party controller for the Nintendo Switch and a high-tier third-party controller for the PlayStation 4. I'll admit that some of the efforts they made to mimic the DualSense controller's features are pretty hilarious, but they still make for a really good experience. And overall, this is a really solid controller. If you guys are interested in the DualShock 4, I'll put links in the description below. Until next time, this is Ness, signing out.